Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another House Rules video. Now, in the past couple of House Rules videos, what I've been doing is covering some interesting stuff like attributes and skills, where we've been fleshing out the world a bit by deciding how the characters will interact with the world. But before we get much further, I think we need to have a look at crunchy rules again. So we know how skills work, but we will need to have a look at things like initiative and damage. Because if we're going to create a tough character, we need to know how they will resist damage. If we're going to create a quick character, we need to know how they will be quick through the initiative system. So that's where I'm going to start with this video. We're going to have a look at the initiative system. Now, as usual, I'm going to look through a bunch of other role-playing games and have a look at how they deal with combat initiative. Different ones I've covered in rules breakdowns videos. Now, some of them are going to be the common ones. You're going to see the same names cropping up as have happened in previous weeks. But I think I've chosen a couple of interesting ones as well, so we can have a look at a good variety. Because initiative is one of the most flexible systems. It's handled in so many different ways in different role-playing games. It's the thing which probably differs the most about each individual role-playing game. But let's go over to the tabletop and start having a look through some rulebooks. So, starting off with Dungeons & Dragons as usual. So, Dungeons & Dragons has a weirdly simple yet complex system. If we flick to one of the character sheets, at the back of the book, we can see we have an initiative rating. Now this is a calculated rating, which comes from your dexterity, but you can get bonuses from feats, you can get magical items which improve it, and various stuff like that. But basically you're taking your initiative and you're adding a d20. So we roll a 9. So if you have a +1 initiative, you are going in 10. And as simple as that. You are going in 10, so you're going after anybody in 11 or higher, you're going before anybody in 9 or lower. But the number of actions you get is one of these things which is slightly complex, because you've got your attack actions, you've got your move actions, and you've got your bonus actions. So things like a monk, who get to do an attack, and then they get to do one of their key moves, which can also be attack, as their bonus action. So working out what kind of action the action you're taking in matters, because you cannot take multiple attack actions unless you're a fighter and you've reached that sort of level where you're getting much higher and you're getting multiple attacks. So the amount of actions you get is dependent on your class, depending on what type of actions you're taking. It just gets a little complex. But apart from that, it's a very simple system. You're just rolling the highest and seeing who goes first. Next up, I've got Shadowrun. Now this is 1st edition Shadowrun, but I'll comment over a couple. So we've got the reaction attribute. Now this will be a fairly large number, 12 or something, because it's calculated out from quickness and intelligence, I believe it is. And you're rolling that plus a d6. But if you've got wired reflexes, they'll be giving you bonuses and multiple d6s. You can be rolling 4 or 5 dice plus a large number. And the way Shadowrun 1st edition worked was you would start at the highest number and work your way down every 7. So if you rolled 24, then you would go in 17, and then 10, and then 3. But somebody who only rolled 10 would go before you in 10, but you would have gone twice before them. Now, they kind of fixed this in later editions by just turning it round. And the actions calculated up from 1. So you would go every time. Everybody would go first, and then everybody would go second who has enough actions, or had rolled high enough to get a second action. Then you go third if you'd rolled high enough to get a third action, 4th, 5th, etc. And it would go round in cycles from everybody to just the ones who had rolled really high, which is a far better system. Because in 1st edition, the big problem with initiative was that you could have powerful characters who had a low initiative because they didn't have loads of cyberware. Because magic doesn't really improve initiative a lot. So your mages and things like trolls who had a lot of armor built in, were your big tank characters, would be standing around while your street samurai would go around shooting lots of bullets, getting 3 actions before they got around to it. But apart from that, it was quite a fun system. It was a way of enhancing your character through initiative instead. Next up, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. If I go to one of the character templates, if we can find them in here, we can see the advanced schemes, but these stand out. And we have initiative here, I. And the higher your initiative, the faster you go. But your number of attacks is based on attacks. So you can buy these up as you go through careers and you level up. Basically, you can buy extra attacks. But these always stay the same. Your initiative is pretty much the same, and your attacks always remain the same. There's no variability between what you can do. Every action you can do, whether it's casting a spell, hitting somebody, is always an attack. Probably based on, because this is a war game at its heart. Next up, Vampire the Masquerade. Well, the World of Darkness system. If I go for one of the character sheets, have we got them at the back here? Yes, there's a character sheet. Now, initiative in it is based on rolling your wits plus alertness. So you're using a skill and an attribute. You're rolling them together. You're rolling a number of d10s. And the higher number of successes you get is the faster you go. So you're rolling against target number of 7, let's say. You get 8 dice to roll because you've got high wits, you've got high alertness, and you end up getting 3 successes. Which means you go before anybody who only got 2, you go after anybody who got 4. The number of attacks you can do, though, is completely different. Because you are splitting your action. So if you are attacking twice, then you take your skill, so let's say your dexterity plus your firearms for shooting a gun, and you're halving that, or splitting it. You can split it down into 2 dice and 5 dice if you've got 7 dice to go between them, however you want. But you're splitting your skill for multiple actions. Now, another game which handles it similarly is the Star Wars D6 system, but I'm actually going to have Carbon Grey here. Now, in Carbon Grey, your initiative works from rolling your perception skill in the D6 system. So you're rolling a number of dice, and the number of successes, the score you get is how fast you're going. Whoever gets the highest goes first. However, multiple actions is also dealt with by reducing skill. So in the D6 system, you're rolling a number of dice equal to your skill. But for every extra action you are taking in a combat round, you are subtracting 1 dice. So if you have a 6 dice skill and you're shooting twice, then you're rolling 5 dice twice. And finally, to look through these, I'm going to bring out something completely different and something I really like, a Orus Essence, because this has one of the most fantastic initiative systems. Probably the best I dealt with in all my rules breakdowns. I really like the initiative system in this. However, it is probably too complex. In an Orus Essence, you have a certain number of action points. And as you act, you burn through those. So if in a combat round you have 7 action points, and you decide to shoot a gun, well, aiming and shooting is 2 action points. So in 7, you target, in 6, you shoot. In 5, you get to do something else, and you go from the highest number down through the action points until you reach 1. And everybody finally gets to go. So when you get a higher value for your action points, you go first, and you get to do more things. But depending on how complex the move is, it takes longer. So if you're using something like a big heavy battle axe, it might take 3 action points to swing. Or you can do a swift attack for only 2, which does half damage. It's a really flexible system. I really like the way it works, because it takes just simple actions and allows you to do things quickly. So shooting a gun takes 2 because you're aiming and then shooting, but if you just want to shoot from the hip at a lower skill, then you just use 1 action point. You can get through a lot of actions quickly if you're willing to take penalties, or you can boost your skill up by aiming for longer, adding to your skill, and then eventually shooting and using lots and lots of actions. Really love this system, but it is a lot of bookkeeping for keeping track of initiative. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my computer desktop, to the file, and we will have a look at what I'm going to put in place for initiative system for this game we're coming up to together. So here we are with the Google document opened. Now, hopefully I've remembered to link it in the description down below. I've remembered the last 2 times, so I'm on a roll, and hopefully I keep that going. Now, the start of this is mainly unchanged. We've got the description text I wrote way back in 1995, where this idea originally came from. After that, we've got the resolution system. We'll come back to that in a second, because it'll matter as we go into the initiative. We've got the attributes, they're pretty much unchanged, and we've got the skills. Now, I've added a little bit of description onto the start of this, because I realised after all my talk last week, I hadn't actually put in the thing I'd complained about in other rule systems, the ability for a character to be able to do anything. So, what I've added is, a skill may be selected in anything a character wants to be able to do. Car repair, cookery, needlepoint, hairdressing, etc. However, some of the more common skills are listed below. Now, that's the same list we came up with last time, or I came up with, but with 1 added. There's reaction added in there, which I'm going to use for the initiative system. It's also a kind of saving throw one. While you could use somebody's dodge or some kind of skill like that, athletics to jump out of the way of falling boulders, being able to notice that's happening more happily sits in a reaction. The character reacts in time. So I've added reaction for that dual purpose. And then we've got the initiative system. So each character rolls their reaction skill, plus dexterity for ranged combat, or agility for melee combat. So depending on whether you're moving around a lot for fighting physically and hitting with swords or whatever, or you're using manual dexterity for shooting a ranged weapon, you're rolling that attribute, plus the reaction skill. The highest number of successes goes first, followed in sequence by each successively lower success. Ties are resolved by highest reaction plus attribute, or a straight dice off. So each of the tied characters roll 1d6 until a victor emerges with the highest going first. So you just roll 1d6 until the tie is broken. If a character rolls 0 successes, they still get to act, but they go after anyone who rolled even a single success. And those who rolled negative successes go last. So going back up to the resolution system. So if you're rolling your skills, so you're rolling your dexterity plus your reaction, and you are rolling 7 dice. Let's say you get 3 successes by rolling a 6, a 5, and a bunch of 2s, 3s, and 4s. But you could have come to that anyway. You could be getting fails. With those 3 successes, you're going before anybody who got less than that, after anybody. But on to the next part of it. Those who rolled negative successes go last. Each character gets a number of actions equal to their number of successes. Characters who rolled 0 and negative successes still get a single action. For example, character number 1 rolls 3 successes. Character number 2 rolls 0 successes. And character 3 rolls 2 successes. Then the combat sequence is character 1 goes because they got highest. Character 3 goes because they got the second highest. Character 2 goes because they rolled 0 successes, so they rolled third highest. And then we go back to the next one, because with 3 successes they're getting 3 actions. With 2 successes, character 3 is getting 2 actions. But character number 2 with 0 successes is only getting a single action, so they're out. So we go back to the start. Character number 1 rolled highest, and they've got a second action, so they go. Character number 3 got next highest, got 2 actions, so there you go. Character number 2 doesn't get any actions because they've run out. So we go back to the start again. Character number 1 rolled 3 successes, getting 3 actions, so they get a 3rd action. And that's the end of the combat round. So we're going 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1. Now perhaps that's overly complex, but I kind of like the way it works, that it's tying what you're rolling into what you're actually doing. So the better you roll in an action, when you're rolling for initiative, you can get multiple actions. It's not completely set like the fighters in Dungeons & Dragons, like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is. It's got a bit more flexible like the Shadowrun system. Now, although I absolutely love the Orus Essence system, I do think it's a little overly complex. But I think we can bring that back in later on when we're actually coming up with the actions themselves that we take in initiative. We can take things like large heavy weapons will take multiple actions to fire. But you can do at half skill for a single action. But we will see how that works out as we go further on and we're actually coming to actions. But I think we've got an initiative system which will work here. But let's see. We could decide to scrap this in the future and decide it's total trash. Anyway, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough as usual, so thank you very, very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.